Welcome to our Study Skills Week in Belvedere College, and today I'm delighted and excited to have John Broderick, who's a teacher in Irish in our school. He's also an advising examiner at Leaving Cert Higher Level Irish and also an Oral Irish advising examiner as well. So huge amount of experience Mr. Broderick has as a state examiner as such. So welcome again today to the video on exam technique. And I'm going to hand it over to John now, but the first question I'd like to ask you, John, is can you advise students on how to approach an exam, please?
Well, kind of before we move to that, last Saturday night I spent a couple of hours inside in school helping students with rechecks. Students basically who were fighting for marks and fighting for a couple of points here and there. And it was so interesting to go back and see the actual live script. And what was always disappointing when you come to the rechecks is the mistakes that you've been correcting all year being repeated the day of the exam. And here you have a young man in front of you who's looking for, one guy started looking for 3 points, short 3 points for his course and short a number of marks. Right, now there was a good few I went through Saturday, whatever. But I just wonder, during the year, when you hand up work to a teacher and you get the work back, obviously you get feedback from the teacher. It can be written feedback, it can be oral feedback, whatever. But what do you do with those corrections when you get them? Do you say to yourself, okay, I've written an essay there now, and there's a certain number of grammar problems have been highlighted, methodology, approach to the question has been highlighted. What do you do when you approach the next question? Do you look back over that feedback, or what type of feedback are you getting? Are you getting good quality feedback for your teachers? I always feel you should insist that what you've written, what you've gone through trouble writing, first of all, should be the best thing you can possibly write. Now, I've just come out of a fifth year class where I said, make this the best exercise you can do. Don't make it a shut John Broderick up exercise, which a lot of students do. They're just going through the motions. I'll get that bit of homework done, instead of saying to themselves, is this the best I can do? And then because this is what you're going to be revising the week before your exam. Now, if you're revising stuff that's half done, well, your answer will be a quarter done when you hit the exam. So the first starting point for exams is quality homework. Now, then you've got to get it corrected by a professional person who's going to give you good feedback on it. Good teacher feedback with a marking scheme applied to it and a grade telling you where you are with this piece of work. And if that's not there as a student, I would say, listen, just say to your teacher, I'd like you to apply the Leaving Cert marking scheme to this question, right? And I'd like some feedback. Now, I give what I call the rugby feedback. Stop doing, start doing, keep doing. Now, I probably should, being for Limerick, I started with the negative one. I probably should start with the positive one, right? Keep doing. So in other words, you'll highlight two or three things you're doing really well in this question. But then there are things you have to stop doing. So that student whose script I looked at during the year, the minute I opened the script, I looked and said, oh my God, these are the three major grammar errors that I've spent the last 2 years correcting. So where have I gone wrong here? Because I've put the underline them. I put the underline them. I put the red mark in them. I put the X in them and the double X and the thing that says I'm screaming at the page here. And the student has taken it away and put it away and probably not looked at it again.
So the key really is to make sure that they take the feedback and look at it and even set up a little checklist for themselves to actually know that these are the 3 things that I need to improve on each week and keep it there when they're setting up the next essays as such.
So I started doing something similar to that now, saying to the student, right, okay, I've given you the grammar corrections, you've them written down on the page here in front of you, you have to sign off in the next exercise that I haven't made any of the errors that I made in the previous question.
Brilliant idea.
Whatever. So it's a difficult one. So can I ask you now, as 5th year students, as 6th year students, quality of homework, but quality of listening then determines quality of homework. So revision starts with the quality of listening, right? And you're in class. Now I just said to a guy, just come out of a class there and said, you're here, but you're not present. And if you're not present and not listening, the quality of notes you're getting down, then the quality of homework is all affected. So you can have all the memory schemes you like in the world, but if the first time you're taught something, you haven't been really present and really focused on it, then you have a problem,
Absolutely.
So that's the rechecks out of the way, Now, move on then to, I always say to the kids when I'm coaching them in rugby, there's so many things you can do that require zero talent, that require zero skill, and you always say to students, you mightn't be great at this subject, but my God, your exam technique can be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can know the marking scheme inside out. You can know the layout of the paper. Yeah. You can go back and read the chief examiner's report.
Which I think is such a fantastic resource for students, you know, to use to actually see what the actual state examiner said about the exam.
And in the marking scheme, they actually give you the sample department answers. So for instance, if you take Honours Irish, there's question 6B in the comprehension paper, where you have to write the answer fully in your own words. Why did the author write this piece? Or what was the aim of the author? And it gives you the sample answers are written out there for you. So there's a ton of information there that you really should have. But I always ask students, if they were putting together ability, hard work and exam technique, right? So you've got a kid who's a lot of ability, you might have a good hard work, good work ethic, but if he's a poor exam technique, now are all three equal? Because you have kids in class saying, oh, he's brilliant at this subject. So how do you make up for not being maybe the most brilliant Irish student or French student when you said, I'm going to really improve my exam technique? I'm going to know the marks, know where they're going, know what's expected of me, get that feedback from my teacher, regular feedback, work on that feedback, implement it on the next question afterwards, you know. Now, I want to give the students some idea as to what happens and how a marking scheme is put together. We'll say, I'm an advising examiner.
Yes.
So we go to Athlone for 2 days.
Yes.
And we pore over the exam paper, word for word in every single question, and see what does the student need to address in the question. Give you a quick example. I was recorrecting an essay for a student the weekend, very disappointed essay he wrote on Irish language and culture. He forgot about the word culture.
Left a huge bit out.
Yeah. So he wrote a great essay, great 4 pages, grammar perfect. And then I said, you feel you addressed the essay? Yeah, I wrote about the language, but what would culture mean to you? Well, it'd probably be music and drama and different things like that, and literature and stuff like that. That might be the more cultural side of it, as opposed to the language side of it, whatever. And T.G. Carr and stuff like that. He said, yeah. So you could see that he got so excited because he had done an essay on the future of the Irish language. Yes.
And he took off.
So you see this little word, August,
but that's reading the question, isn't it?
Yeah,
that is one of the key things in exams, that you actually read the question, and that's why I like bringing in a highlighter and stuff like that. Actually makes you slow down and read that question. And I mean, that's a great point.
I sometimes ask them to write the essay title lengthwise, to write it down on a blank page, word for word, because you know the way you look at it across. On Gaeilge's culture and Gaeilge, you know, and sometimes you say the word Gaeilge and you go into it, but if you go down lengthwise and start, you said highlighting those key words and whatever, and putting the pen down, having the courage to put the pen down at the first page and say, now can I go back and have a quick look at this title quickly, and have a quick reread. Students, particularly boys, particularly us men, hate rereading what they've just written and saying, how much have I focused on what I've been asked to do here? Put the pen down. Have I focused on what I've been asked to do? So that guy left out the word culture, and it's a difficult one, whatever. So just go back. So we pour over that. Sorry?
No, I was going to say what you're talking about there is kind of like a checklist that they need to have in their head before they go into an exam. For each of their different papers, like, you know, so they know the marking scheme, you know, they know the format. They also know, in addition to that, then in particular with the Irish, make sure that you read the full title of the essay, write down netways. Like, have all these little checklists gone into an exam per each of the exams. Sorry, go ahead.
So, for instance, you know the Honours Irish, that there's 5 marks going for it being an essay, 15 marks for ideas, 15% for ideas, 80% for how you're expressing the ideas.
Wow,
So, are you going to be creating something new the day of an exam? Are you going to be trying to express ideas in this subject you've never expressed before? You can't do that because you're going to make a mess of it grammar-wise. So you got to. Exams are not days for being creative, really. You get your creativity out of the way in classrooms during the year. You try things. It's like a training session. You make mistakes during the year. You practice it. Find out, okay, this is the style of essay I'm good at. I've written these essays; they're very good. On the day, though, you've got to stick to what you know, and you've got to have the courage to say, I'd like to say, but have I said that before? Have I tried that before? Is my Irish good enough to say that? 80% of the marks for how you're saying it. So we'll take the Irish essay, they don't care. Really, your opinions there's only 15% of the marks for it. How you're expressing them is the crucial part of it. So with 2 days in Athlone, pouring over the whole paper, word for word, and then you wander into the exam and you see the first word and you say, yes, I'm going to go for that. I'm going to tear into that without thinking whatever.
It's the excitement sometimes of seeing something that you've learned or you've seen in class coming up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can understand that kind of where you jump in and do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, back to the checklist, always refer back to the
totally,
checklist and just make sure that you're reading the question.
Now, the way to get around a lot of times to the students, if you're good enough to give a definition of the question, of what the question actually means to you, what is this question asking me to do?
Yeah.
Or what do I think it's asking me to do?
Yeah.
Whatever. So I say that to students in English, Irish history, all these different subjects. Now, I know it probably doesn't apply in the sciences and stuff like that, to define the question. What does this question mean to me?
Yeah.
What do I think?
Yeah.
Even if you're not going to do it in the paper, at least stick it in yourself, on your hardback notes, and say, take your time to plan it out, plan it out properly for yourself.
It also means, like at the start of the paper as well, make sure that you've time in as part of your timing of actually time for reading all the questions before you attempt them, because as you know and I know, you tend to jump into the questions that you like the look of, whereas in fact you may know more about other questions that you haven't read. You know what I mean?
The time markers are crucial. Those time markers and knowing them off by heart. Now, I don't know, are you allowed to bring in a piece of paper that says essay 9 to 10 past 9, I'm going to read them 10:50? Are you allowed to have a piece of paper?
You're not allowed to bring in paper into exams, but you could do is have it in your head and open the page up when you get in there
and write it out.
Write it down.
Okay,
and like I see students doing that, even like putting a plan around an essay as well before they even started, just to clear their head so they can actually think and then read the question.
So you have something in your head, you go and you write it down immediately, 9 to 10 past 9, read essays carefully, plan essay, whatever, like, you know. Or you'll know, I think, before you go into the exam too, what possibly could be your strongest question.
Yes.
Like, for instance, we're doing a novel now and leading something. I think the lads, I always said, lads, you're very good at this question. It would be great to hit the examiner with this. Also be careful of those open-end questions like comprehension questions, that you don't need to go into something open-ended early. You know, kind of a poetry question is a great one to go into.
Yes.
You know, you get it done, get it finished. It's very clear. There's 3 parts to it in my subject, and you're done. Whereas you go into the comprehension, you get this question at the end. Why do you think he wrote this piece? And you could be writing a page. You could be there for ages doing that and thinking about that. So leave that kind of open-ended stuff to the end, like,
very
you know.
good, it's great advice, John. Like how you even set up the structure of the exam when you're in there. You know?
We talk in sport about controlling the controllables.
Yes.
That what's in your control, what do you know before you go into the exam, what's predictable about this exam. So if we go through all the predictables, the structure of the exam is predictable, the layout of the exam is predictable, the time you can allocate to each question is predictable, the style of questions do not vary from year to year, the style, the words used, whatever, and then previous marking schemes, the advising examiner's report. And then I don't think students use their teachers enough. You need to demand, and my colleagues mightn't like this now, but you need to demand more and say, I want this corrected, and I want you to give me feedback on it, and I want you to say how long do I spend it.
More kind of practice on the past papers and stuff like that.
Practicing past papers.
Okay.
I love when a student comes up to me and said, I did this the weekend, I took this out and did it. You know, and you might be hard on him and say, yeah, but you did this, that, and the other, but he learned from that and whatever, like, you know.
Absolutely, because that's what they have to do in the exam. So if they're practicing past paper questions all the time, it's obviously going to improve their technique and their skills, you know.
I think the other thing too is you have to have the courage of what I call the blank page. Of taking the blank page out and saying, okay, there's the question, no notes, am I ready? How often can you do that and set yourself, I know this poem can come up, I know I'm going to be asked about the theme or the contrast or the images or the Mahokon or something, whatever. What actually can I write?
Testing yourself.
Testing yourself on the blank page and say, am I ready for this? In exam conditions with the exam time constraints. Now, luckily enough last year, with the pandemic, there was no time constraints last year. Because I think we're back this year now in most subjects. There's some little changes in subjects, but with most subjects, we're back.
But you're right what you say about setting yourself up in an environment that is similar to an exam situation, where you have your timer on, you have your blank page, and you have, say, you've pulled together a number of questions around that particular topic, and sit down and attempt them. And even to get the writing, you know, because of the speed of the writing and stuff like that timing that if you practice your writing as well, that can really improve as well.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So absolutely, there are the kind of things that you need to really practice and really become really good at, and that's the skill of it, like you're talking about, you know. And
working under those time constraints is crucial, because 25-30 minutes you have for a poem question, three little poetry questions, sometimes Irish. Okay.
But you're setting yourself up all the time to practice that when you get into the exam, and then when you get into the exam, then it should come naturally to you, because you've practiced so much as well, you know.
Can we go back to where we started?
You can.
Be present in class.
Okay.
Be attentive and ask questions, and produce the best quality homework you can. Because that's your foundation for starting. get feedback,
Yeah.
and for God's sake, look at the feedback and implement it and put it into practice. You know.
Yeah, by doing a little checklist
Yeah,
for yourself.
yeah.
Maybe get a little journal that you have a checklist
Yeah,
for the different
yeah.
subjects that you can actually write down what you learned from each of them. Again, yeah, so that's all brilliant.
I'm learning more from you today than you're learning from me.
Brilliant advice around exam techniques.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I have a broader view of obviously the exam techniques because I teach it as well. But again, like the stuff that you've given, coming from a state examiner, it's just really great to get that information. You sit there and you go over these papers. So for us to learn from you is absolutely brilliant. Again, all the stuff that you spoke about, exam technique is the timing, knowing your papers, knowing the marking scheme, knowing the time is so key when you get in. I mean, even the 2 seconds, say, before the exam starts and you get your page and you put your name on it, that's 2 minutes extra that you have in the exam.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of things, and try like reduce like say fizzy drinks and stuff like that, you know, don't bring them into the situation. I mean, obviously you need to be hydrated, but like stuff like that gives you extra time, might reduce you having like a toilet break, something like that is really helpful.
Put down the pen.
Stop and reread your questions.
Take a breath.
That is the key. Like the brilliant example with that student who missed that thing on culture. Like, because I know myself, I've done exams, and you get excited when you see something that you really like and you get into it. But like to reread the question, like you know, and have the time at the start of the exam. Put it into your actual timing and that you know that, and practice that when you're doing the past papers as well. So when you're doing the past papers at home, make sure that you have a time for the exam as well. That will really help you as well. So to wrap up, key takeaway from today, what would you say is the one thing?
Well, with the lads, I find I focus on organisation so much.
Yeah.
Having quality notes, knowing where they are, different sections of hardbacks, finding stuff. There's a lot of work now with iPads and on iPads, and it can be a little bit harder to access the stuff maybe in iPads than it does in. I work on A4 hardbacks all the time, and you have 3 of those. One is literature, one is essay writing, and one is your tape test and oral work.
Okay.
You know, and you know, have your stuff organised, particularly start to 5th year, and the leaving cert's a 2-year exam. Stuff you're doing now in 5th year, you might revisit that until Christmas of 6th year. So the leaving sort of started now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So keep at it all along.
Keep at it all along.
You know, do the review. So as you say, in class, it's really important to be present in class. When you go home, take out your notes. Actually reread them, make sure you understand them before you get into your next class. If you don't understand them, obviously you can approach a teacher, but like make sure that you understand what you're taking down in notes and make sure they're legible so that you can use them for your practice, you know what I mean?
The amount of students in the recheck the weekend that said to me, why is that underlined, sir? It's spelled correctly. Well, it may be spelled correctly, but the examiner can't read it. So they put a line under it as a spelling error because your handwriting is just not up to.
Seriously, that's a huge takeaway then, you know what I mean? Make sure that you take your time, and by practicing you will become better at the writing, you know, and it'll be legible. And again, by rewriting your notes when you go home, it's a learning as well. You know what I mean? So you took your notes and then you're rewriting them in your own words. That's a fantastic learning. And it's all about spaced repetition. It's all about going over stuff. You know, they say a minimum of 5 times to actually retain it, but it's the whole idea of reviewing it when you come home from class, taking it back out maybe a day later before you start another subject, and just going back over to make sure you understand. And always make sure you understand before you move on. Don't just say to yourself, oh, I got this, when you know in your heart, so you don't have it, you know what I mean? That's the other thing as well, you know? But anyway, thanks again for coming along today, Mr. Broderick, and we'll wrap up on that.
Thank you.
Cheers.